warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat sejahtera, selamat pagi to everyone here. A warm welcome to our webinar series brought to you by Center for Development of Academic Excellence. Oops. Oh, the YouTube. Everyone here. Right. Okay. I have the YouTube on. So this program, this webinar series, is brought to you by Center for Development of Academic Excellence, CDAE, or Pusat Pembangunan Kecemerlangan Akademik. Our role is to run a professional development program for all our 2,000 academic staff spread over 3 campuses, the main campus here in Penang, the engineering campus in Libong Tebal, and also the health campus in Kelantan. My name is Abdul Karim Alias, Director of CDAE, and today we are very lucky to have another speaker from outside, and we have this morning Dr. Ahmad Salahuddin Muhammad Harithuddin, from UBC Putra Malaysia, UPM. So welcome, Dr. Salahuddin.
Thank you, Prof. Karim.
And thank you very much for accepting our invitation to conduct this webinar this morning. I hope you will be our, one of our speakers that we can feature regularly every year. Yeah. So this probably will be the beginning, but I hope to see more of Dr. Salahuddin in the future. Okay. So let me just very briefly introduce Dr. Ahmad Salahuddin. Dr. Ahmad Salahuddin is a lecturer in the Department of Aerospace Engineering. So his PhD is actually in aerospace engineering. So he's a aerospace engineer.
Through and through.
Yeah. So there's another example of, I have seen many engineers. For example, Prof. Dr. Khairia from UTM, Dr. Tazli, many engineers actually having great interest also in teaching and learning, which to me very, very good, because always people from different areas, from education background, or not having a degree in education, but they are from different disciplines like engineering, pure sciences. They always bring a new dimension to how they look at teaching and learning, different interpretations. So I really, really love it. So Dr. Ahmad Salahuddin is actually has a PhD in aerospace engineering from RMIT University, Melbourne. Bachelor, master's, PhD in aerospace engineering all the way. Bachelor and master's in from University of Michigan in the USA. But I guess he has a lot of interest in teaching and learning. And his research interest, for those from aerospace here or from any branch of engineering here, his research interest in aerospace vehicle design, lighter than an aircraft, spacecraft drones. Wow, that's wonderful. All right, so yeah, so that's very briefly about Dr. Salahuddin. I think he's doing also some research on engineering education, or maybe have presented many topics on engineering education as well. I think probably Dr. Salahuddin will be another clone for Prof. Dr. Khairia from UTM, and I guess we can work together also with Dr. Tazli, because he's also into engineering education as well. And I hope we have also people from engineering here, for example, Prof. Shamsul, maybe can work together also on engineering education. So this morning, Dr. Ahmad Salahuddin will be sharing with us on this topic, designing open source examination, which I think very timely, because we are now doing online due to the pandemic. But even if the pandemic, has gone, I think it's still very good knowledge for us to learn more about how can we do, a more impactful, more meaningful assessment, especially when it comes to summative assessment like examination. So let's learn some of the tips and tricks of the trade from Dr. Ahmad Salahuddin. So without further ado, Dr. Ahmad Salahuddin, the floor is yours. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you very much, Prof. Karim. Thank you very much, CDAE USM, for that very kind introduction, very flattering introduction. Before that, let me try and share my screen.
Okay, can
So,
see your
okay.
screen.
All right.
Yeah.
So,
Nice slide, by the way.
you haven't seen the rest of it yet. Okay. So the topic today is designing open resource examination. Probably you have heard of closed book examination, open book examination, open book, open web, OBOW examination. But as the communicative, as the technology becomes more communicative, so we are more open right now. We can use tools, for example. So in this, hopefully in this presentation, we will cover on basically how to actually design the questions, the assessment that we want to include in our examination. Note that, however, I am not including what we call alternative assessment, like, for example, making a portfolio or, presenting a performance, something like that. But I'm specifically focusing on individual assessment at the end of semester, for example, or a test one, test two, something like that. And hopefully we have enough time to get as much as we can from this sharing session today, and then hopefully we can apply it in our if you have tests or exams around the corner, so we can hopefully use this. So this is the content of this presentation today is pretty much based on what I've made for the Faculty of Engineering, UPM, a guide to designing and conducting examination. Actually, this guide that I made for the faculty include more content, including like how to prepare students for taking exams, how to actually assess students, their readiness in taking online exams, and stuff like that, and what to do in grading, how to do rubrics and stuff like. But it's more. There's more in that guide. But in here, I just want to focus on the core of what I will call design the examination itself. Okay, so I would like to, before I start on the content of the presentation, I would like to ask our moderators if you have any questions for our audience. If you have any questions, you can just stop me or can just type in the chat, and I will have like breaks in between, so we can hopefully attend to those questions. So I like to keep my outcomes for this presentation simple. First, we identify the strategies of designing questions for open resource exams, which is pretty much the core content of this presentation today. And I'm really hopeful that this is not going to be just a one-way presentation, me talking only, but I think I really want to learn from the USM committee as well, especially the science, technology, engineering, or math communities, and your experiences, your ideas in how you conduct online assessment, online examination. Okay, and then hopefully by after this, you have some strategies, you have some way of responding to the current needs of right now online education, higher education, and the students' needs as well. Okay. So why are we talking about open resource examination? Because this is a commitment to authentic assessment. Okay, let me see if I can use the, I hope we can see, yeah. So authentic assessment. people has been talking about authentic assessment since 20 years ago. Okay. Now, why is this more important than ever? It's because we are more connective right now. People, well, students are not anymore, taking exams in exam halls, answering, bubbles questions, MCQs. They need to get more future skills like collaboration, although collaboration is out of question in examination, but those are one of the skills that are needed in the future. How to use external tools, how to, find other resources in helping you to solve a problem. So pretty much this is about authentic assessment, how we can better assess and better prepare our students through examinations. So the aim for today is pretty much, if I can just put it in layman terms, we are going to look at tests and exams. Okay, repeat that again, and then we're going to look specifically on online assessment, how we're gonna conduct the exam online. And this is one of the problem where, we talk about plagiarism and stuff like that, and how, students can right now easily find the answers in Google. So how to create Google proof questions, something like that, okay? And how to actually assess higher order thinking skills rather than LOTS, like remembering, understanding. We are past that. We are at the universities now. We have passed all that SPM, PMR level type of questioning. So in order to do that, in order to also assess high order thinking skills and also try to thwart or tackle plagiarism, we need to design better questions. I will show you the reason why after this. And then we want to let students use technology. We don't want them to be stuck in the 80s, in the 90s, where they have like pencil 2B, blacken the bubbles and answer questions without toyol or cheat sheet. We want them to use technology to help them solve problems. Okay, and then of course, this is when we talk about online exam, people are going to talk about online cheating. We're going to look into that as well. Okay, so let's get back to the title of this presentation. What is actually the difference between closed book exam, open book exam, and open resource exam? Why is it called open resource? Now, for closed book exam, you may remember that students cannot have books or notes with them, cheat sheets, toyol, and usually they have proctors or invigilators, we call it pengawas peperiksaan. Usually it's done in exam hall, classroom, and they can only use paling kuat pun calculator. Okay, and then at the universities, students are seeing more and more open book exams where they can bring their own notes and cheat sheet, but still the rest of that are following the closed book exam convention. So what is open resource is actually students can refer to books or notes, their own notes, teachers' notes. They can bring their own toyol, cheat sheets. They can use Google, Wikipedia, and stuff like that. They can use external tools. Doesn't matter if it's Microsoft Excel or softwares in certain courses. MATLAB, I think for those of you who are in engineering and mathematics, scientific community are more familiar with MATLAB, Octave, something like that, or Python, anything, external tools. Okay, they can use all this to answer your questions. Now, if they can use all this for resources, then your question has to be different from the traditional type of assessment, right? You cannot anymore take examples or questions from textbooks and apply it to your exams, because then it will not truly assess the students when they can actually use this. They can just copy the answer from Google, whatever, and then put it in as the answer and then get full mark. So, and here's some of the problems yourself. Possibly there are no invigilators. There's no one actually looking at them, pengawas perasaan, and then it can also be done online. So these are the few challenges and this is the new area, let there be dragons kind of territory here. But there are many people are talking about this open resource exam as well. This is an example. Back in 2014, people are saying about, you may connect it. This is even before the pandemic. Okay, and then I found that actually there's a almost similar topic that which will be presented in University of Adelaide in May. So we're kind of ahead of time. So they are talking about that, and that's from Faculty of Arts. So that's interesting. And then I just, correct, and then I found these instructions from one of the professor from, I think, GMU. I'm not sure. GMU is George Washington? No, that's W. University, so they have open exam rules and stuff like that, what you can use and what you cannot use. So pretty much what is permitted is, of course, class notes, cheat books, cheat sheet, web, it's not tools. What's not permitted, however, what's still what's I would say what's needed when we're doing open resource exam is there won't be any communication between the students. The reason is we want to make this an individual assessment. We want to assess the ability, the skills, the knowledge of each individual. Okay, and also probably you have heard of Chag or Reddit forum, or even your Moodle forum, where they discuss their questions in WhatsApp or whatever in forum. So there's no crowdsourcing support. Okay, and also obviously there won't be any plagiarism, as in incorporating work of others. So these are still not permitted. I think this not only applies to exams, but also applies to assessment in general. So now why are we doing this? So we need to actually strengthen our why, the reason why we want to do this, because if not, then I think we'll be just we're doing it for just to get in the bandwagon, but we are not. There's a study from it was back in 2009 when they talked about this. The interesting thing here is I want to look at this. This is a gap analysis between closed book and open book, open web exam. This time they call it open book, open web. And then they asked students to actually rate these dimensions according to Likert scale. And then I found out that open book, open web exam align more with the pedagogy. And then the learning outcomes also higher here. Intellectually challenging, this is what we need for future skills. Suited some students' learning style. Format relevant to business professional education, because we're preparing them for the future profession scenarios. So exam content engaging, okay? And I would like to point out, see here, this is the difference here. So I think open book, open web, open tools will be more relevant for the future. Okay, and then, well, again, I would like to repeat that the first question that comes to mind when we're talking about online examination, even last year when I gave this presentation to the faculty when we were discussing with all the other academic coordinators, with all the other lecturers, the most common questions about plagiarism. Macam mana kita nak tak nak bagi student tiru, macam mana kita nak bagi student duduk sama-sama dalam satu bilik. So I think the best strategies, and this person, Dr. Johnson, who is the who have published a few papers on plagiarism in education, the better strategy is to develop better test questions rather than using what we call like Turnitin or trying to detect plagiarism, trying to detect what it is. It's better, it's more sustainable to actually learn to design better questions rather than try to invest on these proctoring technologies, tools like Turnitin. So we're going to look into that more than rather discussing about what software AI tools that can detect cheating. We're going to look into that also, but let's look at the how to design actually question. So what are we actually doing when we talk about exams? We talk about output resource. We talk about student outcome learning. We want to construct student summative assessment, and you have to go back to our outcomes. It's all about the outcomes. You need to align what you're testing here, what your assessment questions, with the learning outcome. Okay, if it's about investigating, then your question should be about investigation. If it's about designing solution, then your question should be about designing solution. Okay, so we want to construct instruments that measure students' attainment, and constructing instruments is the topic of the day. Our question was KBKK, then how LOs, local unit wages improve our subject, BPK. I'm reading the question from the chat box here. Okay, I think I know LO, CLO, and PO, but I'm not too sure KBKK. Is it kemahiran berfikir aras tinggi? Maybe you can explain it later. Okay. Yes, we're going to look into that as well. I have a few slides on higher order thinking skills. I will show that to you. But this is some general ideas and consideration. I think we need to revise some of these points here on how we conduct our exams. Usually, the best practice is to design. Is to actually design. Where's my pointer? Pointer. Okay. So design only 10 to 20% to address HOTS, higher order thinking skills. Okay, no. Now the reason is because if you have more, then it's really hard to distinguish between your very good students and not very good students. Your A students and your B students, C students. Okay, you may have if you design all like 50% all HOTS, for example, you may have like 2 or 3 people who get good grades, B, A, good grades, and the rest of the class is C, D. So that if you have your the mean score is somewhere in C, then I think we need to kind of improve the way we design our questions, the way we design our tests. Okay, so this is a suggestion by Felder and Brent. I think is a famous engineering education researcher here, Professor Felder. So Brent, guideline for exam duration. If you design a question, okay, and then if you can solve it in 10 minutes, give students 30 minutes to solve it. So that's like a rule of thumb lah. Okay. Now, if you need to use complex or computation heavy, if you can solve it in 10 minutes, give students about 40 to 50 minutes. Okay. So this is also a rule of thumb. You can try and do this. Structure your exam questions around problem-based scenarios or real-world cases. The reason is because if you design a question based on what's on textbook, okay, then there will be no personalization, I would call it. Students can just give a typical answers to your questions without considering the current situation or personalized situation. Then you won't be able to detect whether they actually know their stuff or they got the answer from textbook or something. And then also re-stressing a lot many times, HOTS, apply, analyze, evaluate, create, synthesize, interpret. But I'm going to be very careful with create here, because this is not an easy outcome to achieve in exams, because creating I think is better suited for a semester-long project, for example, or a long-term assessment. Yeah, I wouldn't really recommend, but we can do that if you can find a smart way to do that. Creating kind of assessment in exam, you may do that. Now, how do I demarcate? How do I draw a line between HOTS and LOTS, lower order thinking skills? I will do it here. This is my personal choice. So anything here will be higher order thinking skills. Am I saying that you shouldn't test students remembering, understanding, applying? No, you should also, because some cases it's in formative assessment, for example, it's very important to make sure they understand the stuff, they try to apply the stuff. And when you try to tackle the open resource, then maybe you need to look at this type of question. really. Okay. I think you've seen that. You're familiar with the Bloom taxonomy before. I think it's been around for quite a while now. But I think you haven't seen this one here. This one is I'll call this, well, the author called this revised Bloom taxonomy, but I will call it two-dimension. So this is the familiar dimension that we already know, remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, create. But there's another dimension as well. Here we call this the knowledge dimension. Factual, conceptual, procedural, metacognitive. Okay. Now, I'm just going to take this example here. This understand here. You know, understand can have another dimension as well. You know, it could be summarizing features of new product, and then if you want to go higher, you want to go test the knowledge, conceptual knowledge, classify something by toxicity, adhesives, and then if you want to go further up, procedural knowledge, clarify the assembly instructions, okay, and metacognitive, that means, you know, knowledge of your own awareness, the student's own awareness, response to a culture shock, for example. Okay. Now, although understand here is usually known as, you know, it's being lower than apply, and then questions or kind of assessments or kind of tasks, you know, you can see that, you know, doing predicts, taking this here, for example, requires, I would say, more effort for student, more cognitive load, then rather respond to frequently asked questions, like what we do in SPM, PMR, you know, tengok soalan, tahu jawab macam mana. Okay, so in what I'm trying to show here is to show you another dimension, okay, and it's usually, it's not necessarily that apply is always requires more cognitive load or knowledge than understand and remember. You know, you need to look at what kind of knowledge dimension you are trying to do. Now, if you want to look at hearts, for example, yeah. So let's take a look at. I would say let's take a look at this region right here. I would say this region. Okay. And then maybe we leave out this, because the reason is, this is just my personal ideas. I've seen someone who include exclude reflect also, but these are some of the stuff that you can, some of the dimensions, or rather criteria where you can put it in your exam. The reason I exclude this one, because I think this is more suitable for not exam, other kind of projects, for example, innovative learning portfolio. So you can try and look at this. And this being the, you know, the 20%, 30% maybe of your open resource exam, or and then maybe some of it, some of your questions you want to just try to look at these. Okay. Yeah, maybe this one in your exam as well, but I would rather focus on this area here. Okay. So that's another way of looking, a renewed way, I would say, to look at the Bloom taxonomy. Okay. Now we have known what we know what to do with learning outcomes and how to construct the alignment between the outcome and assessment. Now look at assessment. Okay. I will call assessment in this case. I will call it test items. The items that you put in your exams to assess your students' skills, knowledge, behavior, whatever. Okay. There are only two types of test items. I classify it that way. There's only objective and constructed response. Objective, as you know, A, given one stamp question, okay, and then you're given A, B, C, D. All right. Now, I think many people, especially right now in the engineering education community, they don't like MCQ because they we have a presumption that MCQ can only assess lower level lower order thinking skills. But I will show you, and this is backed up by literature as well, on how we can use objective kind of questions to assess hearts. Okay, but it cannot be assess creativity. That's one thing for sure. But why I like objective? Because of this automated grading. It's going to be useful because we are online anyway. We're going to have to use technology. So just exploit the technology. Let's try to design better objective questions so that we can take advantage of this. Okay, and also another advantage is it can covers covers the breadth of the subject, not really width. I would say breadth of the subject really quickly. Ask one question, you can cover one small subtopic, for example. Okay, but it's harder to write though. But I think our most popular, not more popular, the more, I think the options that we more gravitated towards is constructive response. Essay, short answer, draw a graph, plot something, make an infographics, programming. So this usually covers depth. So that's why I think this is, and also it's relatively easier to write. So if you want to assess hearts, then usually people are going to use this more. But I've also seen some constructed response kind of questions, but assess only the lower thinking skills, like define such and such, define this. So it's I would say it kind of not using its full potential constructive response. So we're going to look into this objective questions, how you can prepare objective questions for open resource exams, and also some of the good practice, and also constructed response. We're going to bedah lagi ya. Okay, we're going to dig more about these type of questions and how we can make it really hopefully we can see better how we can construct questions like this. Okay, so let's start with objective. I'm going to start with the objective kind of questions first, and then we go to the constructed response, and then maybe after this, after objective test items, I'm going to probably take a break and answer some questions or comments or feedback. I mentioned sharing just now, right? What kind of objective test items? You've got fill in the blanks, you've got true and false, you're matching, short answer. But I wouldn't suggest all this. This is for lower thinking skills only. Plus, we cannot do much. I would suggest MCQ, multiple choice questions, and the least known, least used, but statistically the strongest objective test question. Not many people are using this. Multiple true and false. Okay. So, like I mentioned just now, MCQ is really useful, really powerful, especially when you want to do automated grading. But actually, designing a question is hard. Well, this presentation is not about designing the question, because that is going to take like a day workshop, maybe a weekend workshop. But I would suggest this though. I found this book. It's an old book, handbook, freely available. It's about creating better MCQs, not only for assessing lower thinking skills, but higher order thinking skills as well, for all literature, science, engineering fields. Okay. So what is a good MCQ? One is divert good students away from correct response, one, and cluing poor students towards correct response. So don't try to trick students. Tricky question doesn't mean it's a good question. Okay. Yeah, this is another good book on assessment. It's from Saskia. I'm using that a lot. And then one of the another criticism on MCQ is people would say student will just guess and get marks freely. Okay. If you're familiar with if you look at the statistics, the probability of students guess and then get good grades with it, it's very, very, very low, especially when you have more questions, and then each questions you have more choice items. So actually people won't get much from guesswork. But if you're still worried about that, which is a valid concern, you can do what we call a negative marking. Learn about relative marking from ACT test. If you're familiar with ACT test, is a test for college admission in the US. They used to do this. If you get one answer correct, they will add 1 point. If you got the answer incorrect, they will deduct quarter of point. If you don't answer, then you'll get 0 marks. So students won't be try to guess, because they know if they guess and it's wrong, then they'll get minus quarter. And if they guess it 4 times, they will lose 1. There's a formula for this. The formula is, I forgot the exact formula, but if I can remember it well, if you have 5 choice items, okay, make correct points. Let's say your correct point is X. Okay, so incorrect point will be X divided by 4. Okay, I think that so if you have 5 choice items, then make sure you're incorrect. The penalty is quarter of that full point. So that is if you're worried about guesswork. Now that's for MCQ. There's another one called multiple true and false. Okay, I'll explain this more later and give you examples. It's the statistically strongest objective test questions. I forgot to put the reference here. Multiple true and false format has a greater capacity to characterize students' thinking. So it is actually very flexible, and you can try to you can use that to assess higher order thinking skills as well, except creativity, of course. And it's being used extensively in online courses, MOOCs. Coursera, if you look at the machine learning course, a lot of those questions are objectives because they need everything to be automated, okay? And they employ a lot of multiple true and false questions. And if you kind of try to answer those questions, you realize, hey, this is not as easy as I thought. You know, I thought I could just, pick an answer and get, it requires more thinking as well. So EDX as well. So it's being used out there for online courses, for online kind of examination, open resource examination. So we gotta get to that as well. Mentioned just now, MCQ. I've already mentioned this one here, on writing MCQ. But if you want to assess higher order thinking skills, make sure you use what we call interpretive exercise. Okay, this is from the same author, Susky. What is interpretive exercise? How do you design MCQ questions such that you are not only assessing their lower order thinking skill, only assessing their remembrance, understanding, or simple applications, formula applications? How do you make sure that you will at least have the analysis C4? Analysis, C4, C5, C6, yeah? At least we have analysis. How can you make sure of that? We call this interpretive exercise. What is interpretive exercise? Okay, it's basically simple. It consists of a stimulus. We call this stimulus. Okay, and then from that stimulus, you can generate a few questions, objective items. Why I say this is high order thinking skills, because they need to interpret this. It's better if this stimulus is you create on your own, or is very special. It's not something that is typical you find in textbook, something like that. Well, you can, but it's better when you can create your own stimulus, your own graph, for example, and then create question from this graph. Now, if you worry about plagiarism, then it's really hard for students to actually try to find answers on Google, because actually they need to analyze this before answering the questions. They cannot find the same. It's really hard to search for images from textbooks on Google. So they will have hard time to actually find the answer on Google, for example. And then also if they were to discuss them with their friends, for example, it's really hard to do that, because you need to actually really analyze the stimulus first. Now, when I say stimulus, it doesn't have to be like a graph or a chart. It can be a scenario, a reading passage, for example, a vignette, a diagram, a scenario, a story. Can be like that. Okay. Here's an example for, is there any audience here dalam biology? Ada orang biologi ke? Research method dalam biology. I made this special for you. This is an example of how you can use interpretive exercise, assess HOTS, and make the question Google proof. Okay, so this is what I call the stimulus. This is the stimulus here. Okay, all right. I mark this is the correct answer. Okay, you need to actually understand what's going on here before trying to answer these questions. Okay. So this is what I call a scenario based. I will show another example. I have lots of examples about on a statistics course, how you can course with numbers, math, stats, you can do this also. Okay. That's about MCQ. Objective, multiple, true and false. Okay. So I've already big up this MPF. We call this MPF. It's more flexible, more efficient, reliable, and is used extensively nowadays for online open resource exams, especially in Coursera or any. They are offering professional certificates and all. So, so they are using this for professional certification, and I think we should try to dive more into this also. What is a multiple TF? Okay, this is an example of a test. I was teaching spacecraft dynamics, orbital mechanics. So one of the question, this is actually a formative assessment. I try to give weekly quizzes just to let them be on their toes. So basically, there's a question here, and then you need to. Usually we will have something like check all that apply. Which of these statements are true? And answer could be more than one. May have more than one answer. Okay, something like this. Now this is different from 1 and 2. You know, you've seen this. SPM 1 and 2 is correct. 2, 3, and 4 is correct. This is not what I call MTF. This is still MCQ, and usually it's just assessing low things. Okay, so if you are in aerospace engineering, I think USM has some aerospace engineers as well. If you learn about space, you can answer this. So the answer in this one is, hold on, I don't remember as well. I think this is right. Distance. Yes, this is right. Nope, this is wrong. So this is right. This is right. Okay. So students need to get all right before getting that point. So it's really okay. So let's take a break. Maybe I can answer some questions. But that is for the objective. We're going to go into the constructive response afterwards. And I'll show you some examples that I've done in Microsoft Forms. But let's, in order to stay creative, let's take a break. I think I've talked for quite a while, but I haven't really heard from you. So let's try. Okay. So let me try and answer or discuss the question with you. Yeah. I might ask back the question to you, to all the audience here, because I might not know the answer. If you have a, sorry, so the questions must be hot kan? Okay, yeah. And then how about LO, CLO, PO? We need to adjust and improve our subject. PK apa ya? PK. Maaf saya. Boleh terangkan apa PK? Sebab certain subject, CLO and PO ada satu saja. Okay. I think from if that's the case, then I would suggest saya rasa soalan macam ni, kalau setengah kadang kursus kita ada learning outcomes tu, dia punya aras dia aras satu je, understanding je. Okay, understanding je ataupun RS2 saja. RS1 adalah remembering, RS2 understanding je. Contoh macam tu. Kalau kita nak buat exam yang open resource, saya tak cadangkanlah untuk masuk soalan macam ni sebab dia boleh senang je nak cari kat Google contohnya. Tapi satu idea yang baik ialah untuk buat yang untuk assess yang lower order thinking skills ni, assess dalam weekly quizzes ataupun sebab weekly quizzes tu dia kena buat dalam kelas, habis time tu juga. So lower order thinking skills saya suggest kita buat dalam masa yang kita buat dalam kelas ataupun contohnya dalam session Zoom session kan, kita ada 1 jam. Lepas kita ngajar tu maybe setengah jam we're gonna do some pop quiz. I'm gonna give you 5 questions. Semua questions tu just lower order thinking skills. Kenapa saya cadangkan macam ni? Sebab dia orang akan ada masa yang sikit untuk actually try to Google stuff, try to tanya kawan, and then it's in class, you can actually monitor them somehow to some extent, not really tengok betul-betul dia orang ni meniru tidak, tak. But saya juga cadangkan to do this often. Macam saya buat this kind of remember, understanding kecil-kecil ni saya buat almost weekly. Short quiz saja, 5 soalan. Saya tengok consistency more than their points lah. Kalau markah dia 3, 4, 5, 6 menaik, saya bagi markah lebih lah by the end of semester. So itu cadangan saya lah untuk how to assess lower order thinking skills. Saya tak cadangkan dalam final exam, tapi boleh juga buat. Boleh juga, tak semestinya kita omit terus. Sebab remember tadi, guidelines 10-20% of the higher order thinking skills, and the rest, you may disagree with the percentage. I will go higher. You may say 40% assess lower order thinking skills. It's okay, it's okay. Kalau dia nak cari kat Google, carilah, tak apalah. Maybe it's part of the skills. So Dr. Kamarul Zaman, Profesor Kamarul Zaman Zakasi, hopefully saya akan dapat jawapan ini. How does the MCQ interpretive exercise differ from MCQ for best single answer? It is not. It doesn't differ much. It's still you have one correct answer. You can do your exams. You have 2 correct answers. It's okay. Tapi interpretive exercise, the why I'm advocating for interpretive exercise is because you will assess the students' analytical skills, confirm. Contoh kalau macam yang MCQ yang tak, MCQ yang tak, contohnya macam kita bagi P is equal to this, X equal to this, find Y. So itu lebih kepada apply saja. So if they know the formula, sometimes ada some researchers that say that's not even apply, that's just remembering. Because if you remember the formula, then you know how to use the formula. So when you include interpretive exercise, you will have a stimulus. You need to analyze the stimulus first, and then you answer the question. This is different because it's really hard for students to actually try to outsource their thinking to Google, to their friends, because they need to actually analyze this first. And then there's a flexibility there where you can give different stimulus to different students, maybe just 2 different stimulus for 2 sets of questions, but the answer is still the same. You can design it that way too. But it doesn't differ from the MCQ best single answer. It doesn't differ from that. Like I said, the biggest advantage of MCQ is the automated grading. When you have 60 students, 100 students, and you want to try to grade them, you don't want to give essays to everyone. So make use of this MCQ. It's okay if it's have only one question, one answer, or it's subjective to guessworks. It's okay, but you need to take that full advantage and create better questions. One point I would like to make is do not easily take questions from textbooks and apply to your exams, because mostly they don't have this type of interpretive exercise, and this is actually warned by us by assessment literature assessment experts as well, because in the textbooks the point is usually the outcome is to test your understanding about the content in textbooks. So the question is simpler, like your calculus textbooks. Contohnya macam tu, soal at the back of the tu, biasanya at the back of the book, biasanya it's for understanding, remembering, applying. Okay, when you want to do your exam, you got to step up a little bit. And one easy way to step up a bit is give a stimulus, give like 5 questions. Therefore, foreign researcher from Japan, the participant list, maybe better speak English. Okay, yeah. Sorry about that. Hopefully, I was answering that question from Dr. Kamaru Zaman tadi. Online assessment is really trying to with our creativity. Yes, exactly. It's not trying our students as well, but us. Bolehkah kita gunakan MCQ untuk kursus level tinggi? Can we use MCQ for higher level courses? I've seen courses, higher level courses, I would say advanced courses, yeah. Neural network, deep learning, they use MCQs as well. And they're very good at it. I think if any of us here are from medical faculty, I think you use MCQ a lot, yeah. I know because my wife is well medical officer as well, and she was taking these exams. I think most of the questions are all MCQs, but it's really hard. I mean, it really tests your higher order thinking skills. So I would say yes. The only thing that I don't think MCQ can assess is creativity. If you're looking towards assessing creativity from the students, stay away from MCQ. Stick with constructed response. That's it. Evaluation pun boleh juga. You can use for evaluation C5 kan. Yes, you can use MCQ as well. But don't think MCQ as one question assess the whole thing. That means, let's say you have 20 questions. So one question assess all C5. You know, this is the evaluative kind of assessment. No, it may take a set of questions, like example here, shown here. Yeah, here. All these 4 will assess your way of analysis. Okay, so it's not this, you cannot call just this one question here assess analysis. You got to say 1, 2, 3, 4. All these 4 will assess your analytical skills or evaluation skills. Dr. Muzaimi, agree, yes, medical campus, yes. So I learned a lot from medical people on how to actually, because in engineering there's some stigma towards MCQ. They say, it's too easy. Oh, is MCQ too easy? So what's the answer to this question here? Which answer is correct? We'll take a little break here just to have fun. This is just not serious, yeah. Which answer is correct? Just to prove I'm not too serious with this question, there's a cat there. Any logicians here or mathematicians? Or maybe programmers that can answer this question? Which answer is correct? Is it all of the below, none of the below, all of the above, one of the below? E and F the same. Actually, I don't remember the answer. I got this from I think Twitter. Yes, E and F the same. Dr. To, E and F the same. But I think logically they will cancel out each other, right? If F is correct, then is E correct as well? If E is correct, then is F correct? So before that, so you can, oops, sorry. Oh, yeah. After this, I have something on Microsoft Forms. I will show you what I've done. Some examples. I think the way I do this, I'll show more examples so that you can, hopefully my examples can, you can try to adapt it to your field. For engineering educators as well, I have something for you as well. We'll talk about the complex problems. We're going to talk about, the graduate attributes from the Washington Accord. How we're going to assess that in our exams. Okay. Is there a guideline on how much time per question should we give to students? If you're talking about MCQ, I think, hold on, let me have an exact book here. Hold on. there's a, it's not a guideline, but it's a good practice. I read somewhere, typically MCQ, a student will spend about 2.5 to 3 minutes is each question. So that's the number being thrown around. How do you know? Because for example, if the question just assess your remembrance, your understanding, it will just take a few seconds. You know, pick from ABC. So think about questions like, for example, these questions right here. Okay, I would say the students will probably spend around 10 minutes to 12 minutes to answer this question. So they spend about 2 minutes here, 2 minutes here, looking at this again. I think that's the number with around 2.5 minutes for each question. Of course, you can vary depending on your interpretive exercise, depending on your stimulus. You can do that, but I would suggest those times. The reason is you're gonna have more MCQs, you're gonna have more stimuli. So you want to take. Another thing is, one advantage of MCQ is it can cover the breadth of the subject really quickly. So you might want to ask more questions. So if you have more questions, then let's say you have 10 questions and you want them to spend 3 hours on that one, that wouldn't be good for the students. Okay. Sorry about that. Thank you. So think about maybe an hour or an hour and a half. Don't be too long, because if you give the exams too long, then you open more chance for them to try to communicate with each other. Okay. Hopefully you can try to viral this question around. How many questions are considered too much, like the frequency to reduce? Oh yeah, right. That is actually a very good consideration. Test fatigue. I don't have a definitive answer to this. Test fatigue is a very is an important issue, especially for online, because it's so different when you take exams online. But what I would suggest is to look at the standard, for example, TOEFL test, SAT test. They usually 1 to 2 hours. But what I would do, this is my own choice. For MCQ, I wouldn't spend more than 1.5 hours. So 1 hour to 1 hour 50 minutes, that's enough. To be students always complain, but we we also have to be say, is the complaint valid? But in terms of test fatigue, yes, it is a valid question. So 2 strategies here. Let's say you limit your MCQ test questions for 1 hour. 1 hour, how many 2.5 minutes you can fit in, for example? So that will give you a good example. So what I will give usually, my rule of thumb, 20 questions in just 1 hour. So you will have like 3 minutes each. I think that's a good. Some professional test makers, MCQ test maker may not agree with me, but according to my own limited experience, I think 20 questions for 1 hour is okay. It's long enough for students to answer those 20 questions, and it's short enough so that I can so that the students won't have extra times to try to find Google answer or try to discuss with their friends with the interpretive exercise as well. So my convention is that I think maybe Dr. Tadi siapa yang from US American campus, Muzaimi, maybe you can give an example from your experience. I just want to ask the moderator, can you see my screen now?
Yes, definitely, yes.
MCQ, an example of interpretive exercise.
Yes, we can. Okay. Yes, we can see it clearly.
Okay, thank you, because I just changed a few things. Okay, so this is the example of a statistic course, interpretive exercise. I made this in in Microsoft Forms because Microsoft Forms support LaTeX. So I can write all these weird symbols here, not on Google Form. So it says that the scenario given here, this is a stimuli, this is an interpretive exercise. Two researchers studying relationship the amount of sleep, calories burned, okay? Obtain correlation of 0.28, which has two-tailed probability of 0.08. Alpha was 0.10. So from this stimuli, from this scenario, I created 5 questions, okay? The question that I'm creating here is just MCQ. It's not multiple true or false. This is just an example of all MCQ. So for example, which are the example properly written research question? So obviously this is really hard to try to Google because you need to actually refer to the stimuli here. Correct term for variable amount of sleep. Okay. So as you can see, the question is also somehow what I call personalized because it's based on the stimuli. Okay. So this is an example there. Okay, let's take a look at another types. Okay, now this is an example of not statistic-based course. Okay, this is an example of MTF, multiple true and false. Let me make it just bigger. Yep, there you go. All right. So like a multiple choice, I think it has a stem. Stem means this question here, and may or may not involve interpretive stimulus. Okay, students do not select one or respond; they decide to each other in true or false. Okay, example here, right? When right constructing completion, filling the blank test time, it is recommended that you do what? So in this case, I think you can actually students can have the options of selecting multiple options. Okay, if they don't get the options right, then they want to have the point, for example. Okay, so it's a step up. It has been in the literature also has been proven that it's a stronger types of objective question. You can also combine interpretive exercise with multiple true and false. This is an example from a machine learning course. You're given some data, I would say. Okay, so I think this is on logistic regression. So basically, which of the following statements are true? Check all that apply. Okay, so I think the end. Why is it that way? Oh, so I think the answer is adding polynomial features can better fit data. Okay, this is not true. Okay, something like that. Okay, so it can MTF multiple true and false can be also combined with interpretive exercise. I would like to show you an example, an idea that I got from what's this guy's name? Paul Hanstead and some of one researcher. A combo and MCQ and short answer. I will show this example here and I'll explain it later. So this is an example from my own course, space mechanics. It's basically imagine a cannon top of a high mountain, which are following answer estimates minimum speed that the cannonball must achieve to escape the gravity influence of Earth altogether. Okay, the trick in this question is basically you don't have a definite single answer. You need to estimate. And there are 2 correct estimates, which is this and this, depending on your reasoning actually. And there are 2 incorrect answers. So if the students choose this or this, confirm they are incorrect. They will get 0 for this question. But if they use this or this, there is, I would say these both are correct depending on their logical reasoning. So what I do is I post this question and then I combine it with this. Let's say if I pick this one here, okay? So the correct answer just now was C and D. So I combine the MCQ with another short answer. Justify the choice that you made in the previous question. Start with I choose C because okay, if you use it depends. However, if you just some technicals, I think for that question, if you assume that there isn't any atmospheric drag, that you assume there's no aerodynamic drag, you assume that the Earth is perfect sphere, and you assume that there won't be any momentum loss, then C will be the answer. Now, if you assume that there's an atmosphere, there's extra perturbations, then answer D would be more appropriate. So both C and D is correct, but I give the students a chance to actually answer, justify their question, their answer. Now this provides two advantages. One advantage, a win for me is like this. A win for me is, let's say I have 100 students and 50 students answer A or B. So I don't have to grade this short answer part. I just give them 0. So I might have 100 students, but because 50 students chose A or B, which is the incorrect answer, so I don't have to actually mark their essay because their choice of answer is already wrong. Now I'm left with only 50 students that answer either C or D. Now I can look at their short answer, their justification, how they answered this one. Now, why I like this justification here is because this is where personalized answer comes from. You will see that if the students are trying to collaborate with each other, or complot, try to come up with the same answer, because the answer might be different. Okay, so a win for me is, instead of grading 100 students essays of 100 words, I can now be reduced to, I don't know, 50. All right. The win for student is, now the students has to actually assess their high order thinking skills. One, and also they can give their reasoning. I choose this because here, this is the reason. I don't agree with the assumption that you need to neglect air drag, you need to neglect this and that. So I will choose this. I think this is my better answer. So they have a chance for them to actually try to justify the answer, which is good, I think. Okay, I would spend about maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes for this combo type question. You can, this is a simple example. I think you can better adapt, better modify this type of questions. Okay. And then, yeah, this is the examples here. Let me share again this here. Just checking with the moderator, you can see this one here. There's a question. How do you reduce possibility of students copying to answer MCQ questions? I use two methods. One, shuffle the questions and shuffle the answer. But that's dangerous for if you have like a combined question about just now, like just now. Okay. Shuffle the answer will reduce. You cannot actually totally eliminate, but you can reduce the chance. Another thing is, when you talk about test fatigue just now, we talk about timing, right? We set each question 2.5 minutes, and then we give the student 2.5 to 3 minutes, and then we give students 1 hour to answer all 20 questions. One strategy there is to keep it exactly 1 hour, because if you give 20 questions and then 2 hours to answer the question, then there will be a possibility that the students will try to ask a question to ask their friends, because they have so much time, so they have so much free time. So that's why those questions like how many times should students spend on one MCQ question is important. So that is actually one of the strategies to reduce the chance of plagiarism. Shuffling question is one thing, but again, when you shuffle question, you cannot do something like this. You can shuffle the section though. That's okay too. Students may not like it, but sometimes I do it anyway because it reduces the chance of. Let me see where am I at time? 10 o'clock. So they can take photo. Oh, they can take photo questions with answers page by page and pass them to the group. Yeah, this is one of the ways of how they cheat. That's why one of the strategies I do if I don't have any like connected questions, I shuffle the questions so that they don't have really, when they sit for exam, everyone will get different questions. So I know they can share along, but most probably they will try to work on the problem rather than trying to discuss everything. Plus, when you have a shuffled answer, everything, it's really hard to actually have 20 questions and discuss everything, try to answer everything, in just 1 hour. So that is one strategy is to reduce the time of the exam to just nice. What is just nice? 1 hour, 15 minutes, 2 hours, 1 hour. It depends on your experience. My experience, I think I put 20 questions, hard questions, interpretive exercise and everything for 1 hour. Reduce the chance of them trying to collaborate. And I think I have a few slides afterwards to talk about cheating. I think we need stories from others as well, how they cheat and stuff like that. I hope I will cover this in depth more, Dr. Mandali. Okay. Now let's take a look at, move on from constructive response. Oh, by the way, have anyone answered this yet? Screenshot this and then share it with your friends. Trying to plagiarize, okay. Which answer is correct? There's a logical question actually. Okay. Constructive response. There are actually just 2 types of constructive response. No matter how you want to do it, there are only 2 types. Okay. One is what we call interrogative statement, basically just a questions like, what is this? What is that? Determine this, determine that. So that's, oops, I was looking for my pen. Okay. And also imperative statement, a task description. Design this, investigate such and such, write such and such. So 2 types only. Okay, so answer not only in text. Yeah, if you want to reduce the or increase the personalization of answers from students, reduce the chance of everyone trying to copy to each other, you can try complex graphics. Ask them to make maps or flowcharts or matrices or table, Venn diagram on their own, or create their own plots. So you would know who actually try to copy with each other. It's easier to do it that way. Text is easy nowadays because they can just copy. You can use Turnitin and all that, but I would suggest combine it with complex graphics. Okay, combine. But I wouldn't suggest videos, musical composition, performance, portfolio, because I think it may not be suitable for exam. Exam usually is limited time. The longest I would say maybe 24 hours, but this is more suited for assessment. Okay. How does student response? There are only 2 types of response. Now, these 2 types are important. One is what we call a restricted response. Basically, answers that have answer schemes. You may call these subjective questions, but you have answer schemes. So prompts ask everyone to provide a pretty same response. Usually this would be in math or engineering, where you have to do calculations, show your calculations and all that. Those are what I call restricted response. But what we need to give more attention to is what we call extended response. It gives students latitude in deciding how to complete the assignments. Okay, for engineering is important because this is what we call the complex problem solving, WP. Okay, the complete assignments may vary considerably in organization, style, and content. Why this is important? Because this reduces the chance of copying each other. Of copying students. Okay, or incorporate work with others, or incorporate work of others. So I also have some cases for math later on. Okay, so construct response using, okay, what's difference from open resource to open book, open web is you need to you may ask your students to use tools or software. Okay, but there are certain considerations that you need. It's important for you to take into account before giving your students the exam. One is make sure your students are already using the tools in your course. If they're not familiar with that course, then you wouldn't know that some students may not have that tool, some students may have that tool, some students are not familiar. So it's part of the constructive alignment philosophy as well in our OBE, familiarity. Make sure students are using tool. Okay, use available and easily accessible tool. For example, spreadsheets. Everyone has spreadsheets right now. Ask the students to, do a ledger, for example, on spreadsheets, or make a simple calculator. Okay, and Google Map. I've done one exam where students actually have to use Google Maps. So this is freely available. This is also freely available. Give math questions, ask them to plot, copy down the plot from Wolfram Alpha, for example. Okay, and if you're using tools, external tools, not only open book, not only open web, but external tools as well, give more time allocation. Okay, but don't make it too complex. Okay, save the more complex problem for other type of assessment, not exam. So think about maybe they can solve it in. I've done one exam, open tools exam. I give them 4 hours to do that. I give the question in 12 at 12 no, is it 12 p.m.? I think it's, oh no, I give them at lunchtime, I think, yeah, 12, and then finish it at 4. So everyone has to handle it by 4, no excuse. This is my question. I've done this for an it's a course related to aerospace engineering. It's about building drones. Now, why I say this is an open web open tool? Now, open web because they need to refer to Civil of Aviation Authority Malaysia standard requirements. So they need to access this document. I didn't give them this document. They need to actually find that. And then this is really open questions, which create a simple checklist. As if you're launching the drone tomorrow. Okay. Oh yeah, by the way, if you need to answer, if the students need to answer one, so they need to actually provide the flight details according to this standard. In this standard, you need to actually provide this map, for example, and then calculate the distance from here to here, calculate the area, and then calculate how far you are from the nearest neighbors, for example, because they need to comply with the CAM requirement. So they need to do this analysis, whether they want to draw a radius. You can do all that in Google Map now. Find the coordinates and all that. So they need to use this tool, Google Map tool, to be able to answer number 1. Okay, so this is also, and then organizing table. This here is another type of answer that a complex, I wouldn't say complex, but yeah, table form. So students will have different kind of tables. I can detect a few students who will try to copy each other from this assessment. And then also they need to actually use the website to actually look at this code of ethics for young engineers, and then ask them to pick the relevant. Okay, so this is pretty much a multiple true and false. If they just pick any points from this list, then they might get a wrong answer. So this is an example of how I use MTF in a way in a subjective exam. This is one example of an open tool where I use Google Map, and open web where they have to refer to standards and all. This is another example of where they use this tool, Wolfram Alpha. Okay, and seems like a simple task, but I like this one. Give them a problem scenario. Okay, this is actually a calculus course, believe it or not. But I added something just to get them to think about, make it a complex engineering problem. So basically, they need to just plot this, and then they will have some kind of asymptote here. The vertical asymptote. That means the cost to remove this is percentage toxic waste. So they will get something like this. So to remove 100%, then you're gonna require. Wait a second. I think I got it wrong. I think percentage here and then the cost here. All right. Okay. And to remove 100% of pollutants, then you might have to spend infinite amount of ringgit. So that was actually the answer that I want them to get. I want them to interpret from question A and B. So it's sort of a interpretive, but they need to actually create this. So in order to just make more say variables, I just ask them to actually pick any here, just to make sure that they don't just, it's not easy for them to copy. from each other, not to eliminate, but just to make them easy. So question is, now that I use that example, yes or no. It's basically question B is a MCQ, true or false, yes or no. If they, is it possible? The actual answer is, it's not possible. Okay, the actual answer is no. But if they choose yes, then I don't have to actually look at C and D. If they say no, it's not possible to remove all because here, and then I'll start looking at C and D. So it saved me time from grading 100 students, stuff like that. So explain your result in B using your answer in B using result in A. They need to use their plots to explain why is it not possible. And then if you're engineering, from engineering, you might be familiar with WP, which is actually engineering complex problem solving. Okay, complex problem solving. WP is this one example. It's WP is abstract solutions. I mean, there's no one correct solution. There's no one correct number. And then WP6 is considering all stakeholders. So stakeholders, citizen, city council, you have conflicting requirements there. Citizen, of course, they're 100%, but you cannot do 100% because you don't have infinite amount of money. And then you need to know about this trichloroethylene, trichloroethylene. You need to know about that, and then how much you spend. So it's an open problem. Okay. So those are two examples. Again, I would rather start with the Bloom taxonomy, start with the descriptive verb because it directs the students more than answering big, why, how, what. Okay. Let me mention a bit about engineering education. This is a program outcomes. Okay, as you will probably know, if you are assessing different program outcomes, then you need to assess their complex problem analysis as well. This one, if you're assessing WA1, engineering knowledge, you need to have complex problem solving, complex engineering problem. This one, complex engineering problem. This is complex engineering problem. Same here, same here, same here, and here. Okay. So WA1 until WA7, if you're assessing those attributes, you need to somehow, somewhere in your course, assess them with problem-solving skill of engineering complex engineering problem, complex engineering problem. Sorry. Okay, and communication is complex engineering activities. Only this. The others you don't have to actually include the EA stuff. If you remember. I'm sorry if this is like a way it's not relevant for your field, but I'm right now trying to address a few problems in engineering education here. Okay, so for EA, just concentrate on this communication, but all the other stuff you need to use WP as well. Okay, so as you probably know, how to actually write a question that have this kind of attributes. Okay, you need to look at this lah. Okay, number one is a given. Your constructor response question for this can be applied for any science subject also. Doesn't need to be in just engineering or math subject. So if you're doing a question that requires complex problem solving, I'm talking about complex here. What is complex problem? Then you need to have this. This is the given lah. And then you need to choose two or more. I think so. Included in two or more. So at least two. If I remember, at least two others. WP1 and two others here. So two or more. Here, two or more. Okay. I think they say characteristic of up here. Now, for that question just now, the cost of river pollutants, I picked this one. I think you need some kind of depth analysis, and it has no obvious solution. There's no answer like say, oh yeah, you need to move 75%. No, depends on your analysis. And then also it involves stakeholder. I mean, you need to think about from different stakeholder perspective in this example. So I justify it that way. I think the students needs to think of the problem from different stakeholders' point of view. And in that case, I think there is some level of competing requirements as well. It doesn't need to actually involve real stakeholders, but I picked this three. So make sure you have WP1 for engineering educators here, and 2 others here. You can pick the other 2. Okay. Now, some ideas for good constructed response test. Okay. These some ideas lah. I picked from a few books. I think I thought of some of these on my own. It's a generic question, so you can try apply it for your course. Okay, so you can take a look at this. I also included WA aggregate attributes. What kind of a complex problem here? So you can do that. Okay. Before I continue, I would like to look at questions from the. What about consideration of perhaps student might not get a good Wi-Fi regarding stringent time given? Yes, that's a good consideration as well. That's why in the guide that I've written for the faculty, the first actually assessment that you need to do before giving the exam is to assess students' online readiness. They have like we will give out students questions, a self-assessment question asking like, do you have a good Wi-Fi at home? If you can you find somewhere else? Do you have a computer, or do you just rely on your phones? There are like, I don't know, 16 questions maybe for students to reassess their own, self-assess their own readiness for online exam. It is important because then when you get the result from students, then you can ask the students, for those problematic students, whether you have are you ready for this exam? Now that's one, self-assessment. Now during the exam, usually for MCQ, during my experience, I will have 1 or 2 students who actually had problems submitting, but maybe I would say just 1% of the student will have problem. So big probability of students can restrict to that time. So it's important to let them know that you are given only 1 hour, and then you need to click submit before 1 hour. Okay, that's for MCQ. For MCQ, probably it's easier. For constructed response question, I would say this. If you use Microsoft Forms or Google Forms, okay, you can tell them you need to actually send the answers before this time, sharp. Okay, so the Google Form and Microsoft will record the time submission. Now, if you have problem, you need to actually send your manuscript to me by email or by WhatsApp, so that you can have like a time stamp. Usually, I will just give about 10 minutes after the exam ends for them to upload. I'll say to them, okay, you need to stop at 10, but I will just make sure the end, the closing date, the closing time is actually 10 minutes after that, just to take into account all this. Okay, this is just my strategies. Maybe some of us have better strategies on how to adjust to students who have some problem with Wi-Fi and stuff like that. Plus, I think keeping it short, like 1 hour, is better for them who have Wi-Fi problem, or creating a totally open-ended, open tools exam for 4 hours. They don't have to actually be on the internet for the whole 4 hours. Okay. So some other ideas on how to make sure our question in open resource exam is not textbook like. It's not easy to find in Google. It's not easy to discuss with your friends and then get the same answer. Use Socratic questioning. Okay, I got this from the engineering education from my alma mater, University of Michigan. Try to have questions that demand clarification or probe assumptions, probe reasons and evidence, ask about viewpoints. I have some examples here that can be applied for engineering or science. Okay, so you can adapt this question into your field. If you have, or if you already have a problem that you have in your test bank right now, try to find a way how to incorporate one or two of this. Okay. For example, I think this is interesting. Usually, if X happen, what else will happen as a result? You know, you can do interpretive exercise. You give a scenario, and then answer, and then another question is you just flip it altogether. Say, okay, now this X doesn't happen. What will happen to the results, for example? So this is a good way of making that question. It's not the typical textbook question, exam question, which you can find on Google, you can find on textbooks, you can discuss with your friends easy and then get restricted response. It demands more of an extended response to use this. I've already shown this combination of objective and constructive response. Why is it useful for you and useful for the student as well? One question I got when I first present this in UPM is we have some lecturers complain about, oh, what about math questions? Math questions, even if you make it open-ended, if you even make it constructive response, then you will have, so you still have restricted response. Everyone will answer the same numbers. How can you, reduce the chance of students copying each other and stuff like that? So I got a few ideas, but then I found these great papers, really obscure papers back in 1994, asking good questions about differential equations. And then in this paper, the author write down 4 design principles of constructing better math questions, which I think is applicable for all type of math or statistics type of questions, that numbers that are typically restricted response type of questions. So I thought I want to share with you guys here. So so there are 4 design principles here, which we can be used. Be ambiguous, 1. Ask about, not for. Explore vocabulary, and shift context perspective. Let me show you an example that we usually do, and then how we can improve our question. Okay, so this is an example of question in differential equations. Y prime equals to y. Dy dt equals to y. So what is the solution? Okay, initial problem value here. This is a typical differential equation kind of question. So students will have to, apply a few techniques of differential equations in trying to solve and trying to find the unique solutions. Okay, and usually the technique is already in textbook, so they can just change the numbers, apply it blindly, get the answers. Okay, but instead, I will suggest you to do this. Find a same question, but instead of giving it 1 here, give parameter A. Makes the question more open-ended. Now you might think that this is not, it doesn't do much, but when A is negative, then the solution is going to be different, totally different. Not totally different, radically different from if A is positive number, or A is 0, for example. Okay, there's one example. Okay, another one is this. The solutions of this, A. What is A? We add ambiguity. I don't know. A may be a positive number, maybe So you have 3 different kind of analysis that the students need to do. Okay. So if the students just do one analysis, for example, just give half a mark. If they do all, then give an excellent 10 marks. Maybe depends on how you want to create the rubrics. Okay. All right. Or you omit information. I've tried this last year. Many students are not ready for this, and that could be a bad thing, that could be a good thing. But good students are able to actually answer these questions, and you can actually separate between the A+ students with the rest of the students. But give them a bit more familiarity with this type of question. They are more used to this kind of question. But you give them this, it throw them off a bit. Okay, this is another example down here. Okay, some suggestions is take your existing question here and just improve it this way. It's easy. Ask about, not for. For example, don't ask for just ask for inverse. Okay. Now go a bit deeper. Laplace transform. So I'm taking the same question and improve it. Apa function? Does the function grow, decay, or oscillate? Okay, so instead of just punching in the calculators or whatever, go from alpha and get this, they need to actually look at the solutions. Look at the answers, or maybe plot some stuff. Okay, this is another. Solve the following equations in this method. I think this is really common in math questions. Okay, instead of that, list every method you know can be used to solve. Justify which method you want to use. So I use this in numerical methods. I really like this. I taught numerical methods a year ago, and then there's a question. I give an open question, and then of course there are a few methods to use how to actually find the roots of the equation. False position method, bisection, Newton's, and then tell briefly the methods and why you choose the methods. So it gives more personalization for students. Okay, explore vocab. Okay, instead of this, you can ask for. Give an example of this. Give an example of that. So this is more, I would say, more open-ended. Okay, fine. Instead of asking just find the amplitude, ask about this. We're doubling the initial display, so ask about this vocab instead of ask about numbers, which is the period. So it requires more thinking from them, because sometimes it's dangerous. This kind of question can only assess remembrance. If the students know their formulas, then maybe they can answer this. Okay. Another one is shift context and perspective. Okay. Not just algebraic perspective, you also have graphical perspective, you also have numerical perspective, and of course algebraic perspective, numbers lah. Okay. Try to combine more than one of these, then you'll get a better perspective. Okay. So, and then the next one is about grading. Well, we have all this stuff about how to create better questions, and now we get into grading. Okay, so let me attend to some questions. Please, if you can use your mic, I need to hear your voice. It's kind of lonely here. Just talking to the screen. Hello. Question. Oh, yeah, question. I answered that one as well. Wi-Fi. If you need to use continuous Wi-Fi, maybe limit to 1 hour, not more than 2 hours. If students can go offline a bit and then come back online to submit their questions, that's better. Assalamualaikum. Could you suggest a good way to do an online exam for 400 plus students? I will take an example from the existing MOOC course from Coursera, for example, from EDX. The way they do it is they will do a lot of MCQ because, objective test items, because one, you're dealing with 400 students. You need some kind of automated grading. Okay. Now, if you are worried about MCQ will be too easy, then look at the examples before, MCQs with interpretive exercise, multiple true and false, how you can combine them together, how you can combine one MCQ with short answer. These are the ways that you can try them. Maybe not do all, maybe do 1 or 2 which you're comfortable with, but I would suggest start applying the multiple true and false, because it has been used extensively in online courses, even in higher level courses. Like I said, mentioned neural network, deep learning, they all use that as well. So I would suggest fully exploit objective test items because we want to take advantage of the automated grading. Now, you may include a little part of your total assessment, your final examination, for example, maybe 20% for a project. Think about also how you want to grade the projects later on, because 400 students, you don't want to be reading 400 essays, okay? Hopefully, 400 students, hopefully you have a few other lecturers to help you with, but I would suggest this lah, exploit MCQ with the quality questions, and then only small part, maybe 20% where you open-ended, has standard programming. What kind of course is this? Maybe if I can, maybe it's related to some other courses that I'm taking.
Assalamualaikum, Dr.
Waalaikumsalam. Ya, alhamdulillah dengar suara. Sejam dekat dengar suara orang.
Saya yang tanya soalan tadi tu.
Yeah.
Kami buat last semester lah this course 475 students, and we do it yang cara manual lah. Means that answer question, lepas tu jawab macam tu. So we have a headache to mark the exam actually, and it is online. Kami marking on the screen. So that's why I'm asking you. This is a material engineering punya course. So it's a compulsory for all the first year engineering student to take this course. So that's why I'm asking you your ideas how that we can make it better next year.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Yeah, actually that's very relevant. Material science courses, I think a good friend of mine in my department also is teaching material science engineering. And since this is first year course, then I think it's more suitable for you to actually employ some MCQs. You may get if you start suggesting to your friends, to your other lecturers, you may get some resistance. Say MCQ is for ni lah, understanding je. It's just assessing the lower order thinking skills, but you can use the material up here to actually try to make the question better and assess higher order thinking skills. Like I said, try to exploit the power of objective test items. Because we have 400 students, you don't want to, you have essays, everyone, pening memang ni lah. So jangan diri sendiri. And then maybe if you still want to include some open-ended kind of test like this, which I think you should also, have only maybe I would say 20 to 30%. I would say if maximum, I would say 50% lah maximum. 50% of total grade is based on this constructed response, because we are considering our own grading assessment lah kan. I know we want to do we want to give them the hardest questions ever in the world, you know, but we need to think about ourselves also, our mental health. Students saja. So I would suggest that employ MCQ as well. It's okay. The world has been using it. The online education has been demanding it as well. So why not just, you know, jangan degil lah, kadang setengah kita degil kan.
Because the perspective of others. So people like don't allow us to do this. So kami pun buat lah yang style lama punya style tu.
Style lama. Itulah. Ini kompleks ni. Ini kompleks ada pasti. So,
okay, anyway, thank you, Dr. Salahuddin.
Alright, okay, Dr. Yusof, just to share. Dr. Yusof sharing something. Just to share, I've taken multiple machine learning courses on Coursera. They usually employ iframe modules to accept code that will be assessed by algorithms running. Running hidden test inputs to ensure student code robust. This is on top of MCQs. Yep, correct. They have programming, which they include some kind of automated grading as well. So, for example, if you need to write a code and get some kind of restricted answer like 1.01, so if your code is right, you will get that number. So they will do automated grading based on that. It's pretty brilliant. So I think maybe some of your programmer friends can help you with the automated grading for programming assignments. Yes. Me too. I learned a lot from that too. Okay, now what's next important but often forgotten is grading. Right now, we are not using anymore answer schemes. Answer schemes are outdated. It's for restricted response type of question only. Make full use of automated grading, like I said many times. Don't be afraid of objective. You may get some resistance from your friends. It's okay. Tell them, you know, literatures have been saying that, you know, you can actually use objective test items to assess higher order thinking skills, except creativity lah. Okay. Make use of the simple forms like Microsoft Forms, Google Forms, or any other. I've seen one conference last year. They used the Jupyter notebook. If you're familiar with Python, Jupyter, Jupytr, to actually do something similar to Microsoft Forms, or more flexible. Brilliant. I want to try to dive into that. Use rubrics. If you are not familiar with rubrics, start using it now. There are many examples out there. There are many copyable rubrics that has already been made out there. You can just use them, modify to make it your own. I'll explain these two different types of. And I'll show you also, okay, if you're creating rubrics, what are actually, if you're grading complex engineering problem solving, for example, or complex problem solving in general, what do you assess if you don't get numbers? If the number is not 1.234, if the number is not 3.142, then what kind of criteria I'm assessing? I'm showing you here, yeah? So create rubrics. There are two types of rubrics. The major types of rubrics: holistic and analytic. Okay, so holistic is basically it's simple. It just gives you some guide. I wouldn't say objective. It's still subjective, but more guided response to your guided grading for your student. So let's say the student is writing a research paper. If you read this research paper and then it's more towards this kind of level score, all right, you will start thinking of giving between 70 to 79, and then you'll start finding points from there, and then try to make it try to decide whether it's 70, 71, 77 or 79. Okay, so it is more holistic. That's why it's called holistic. It's looking at it as a whole, I would say. All right, so this is useful for a more complex product, research paper, infographics, what else? A blog post, something like that. Okay, but the one that I'm using often is what we call analytic. You have descriptions here, and then you have these levels and satisfactory, intermediate, good, and then for each level you have this. Okay, the more complex your you want to grade, then you will have more description, then you have more here. But I will just use for one assessment, I will have probably 3 or so, and then I will just divide it into excellent, good, intermediate, and satisfactory. I give 1, 2, 3, 4 here, but it depends on me lah. Whether it's full mark 10, then you can give the percentage of 10.
Ya, Dr. Salahuddin.
Yes, saya.
Ni Dr. Yusri ni.
Hi, Dr. Yusri, ya.
Ya, the other one yang holistic rubric tu, kalau dalam e-learn dia dipanggil marking guide, dia tak dipanggil rubric.
Oh yeah, the different language,
Yes.
different terms, marking
So
guide.
sometimes they some pensyarah dia get confused dengan
I see. Okay.
dengan cara set up. Sebab kalau rubric dalam e-learn kita memang secara analitik sahaja. Tapi kalau dia nak marking guide seperti ni, ada range. Macam kan beza dia antara dua ni ialah satu ada range, satu lagi tak ada range. Yang kalau dia nak range, dia nak kena marking guide.
I see.
Marking guide.
Okay.
Dia bagi rubric.
Okay.
Tapi itu good. Ya? Hello?
Hello, yeah.
Tapi I think this is just terminology lah kot. Semantic.
It's good also because actually we use different terminology. Sometimes terminology is important also. I asked one question last time because you know how engineers are usually I can talk about aerospace engineers. We usually have checklists, right? When we want to check the health of an aircraft, for example, a subsystem of an aircraft, we have a checklist, maybe 200 checklists. Is this there? Yes. Is this there? No. Is it there? Yes, no. So I was asking this Professor Wang from CADE UPM about when we were talking about rubrics. Can we use checklist as rubrics? And then the answer that I got is checklist can be used for assessment, but it is not called rubrics. It's called checklist. So that's why the terminologies can be different. Checklist is just yes or no, yes or no. Do they have this? Yes. Do they have this? No. So that can, if done properly, checklist can also be a form of guided assessment. But I would suggest explore these rubrics. This is really useful, especially when you have a complex problem. And then some called marking guide as well. Thanks for that, Dr. Yusri. Yeah.
Yeah, just nak tanya your opinion atau your punya cara tentang rubric. Sometimes macam I like to use the one that you show here. There's a 4 scale di mana we have to commit between 2 dengan 3 antara sedar dengan baik. Tapi ada setengah tu dia pakai 5 sampai 5 level di mana orang tend to use the middle point kalau they're not sure. So which one is a good one untuk pakai?
Actually that's a question. The question is the same. The Likert scale kan, Likert scale biasa typically 5 kan. and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then something in the middle. 3 is when you're not sure, or you're I don't know, you're neutral. But some researchers, they're arguing, well, if you're not sure, then 3 wouldn't be, score 3 out of 5 wouldn't be really accurate to show that you're not sure, or you are in the middle. If you're in the middle of a, well, this discussion is about Likert scale. I think it's relevant also here. Sometimes when you're not sure, then you just pick the middle point. But I think that is where your here, the way you write this is important. Okay. I wrote here is just 1, 2, 3, and 4, but usually I'll just give I'll put 0 to 3 here, and then maybe 3 to 5 here, 5 to 8 here, and then so on and so forth. I usually have this. So if I think it's in somewhere in the middle, I can't give this, but I think it has this as well, so I'll just give 3. Usually I'll do that. So I have numbers, but I think this depends on your own, how you want to do it. But I would suggest for rubric for analytical rubrics like this, it's important that you write this so that you can actually it helps you, not you're confused by your own rubric. One suggestion is I would suggest that you write the unsatisfactory first, and then write good part. What's not good, what's good, and then you start writing what's intermediate, what's exit expectation. That's I learned that in the workshop lah. How to actually write your analytical rubric. Yeah.
Okay,
So,
thanks.
No worries. Thanks for the input, Dr. Yusri. I think that's great. That's great. So assessment criteria. Let's say you don't have restricted response. What can you do? Well, you can pick any of these 14 suggestion options. Okay. Creativity of thought, design solutions. You can include that as well. These are all really subjective. Well, yeah, I don't like the word subjective, but it's relative to your. A good. I always use this. There's a graduate for engineering. For engineering. There's McGill for the engineering. They have like a graduate attribute indicator rubrics for each of the WA, from WA1 until WA14. They have like a generic typical rubrics for assessing each of the WA. It's general, so you can try to look at it and then try to modify it or guide you to make your own rubrics. Okay. Okay. I think I want to spend. I have a few activities here, but I think if we only get 10 minutes left. But let's talk about strategies for thwarting online cheating, and let's make this as a closure, I would say. So before, I like to make this, I guess. I really want to get everyone's opinion on this. Your stories. I really need to hear stories so that I can learn from you. We can learn from each other as well, how you tackle or what cases have you heard. But first, let me start the sharing because we have here. Let's hear your stories. So I would like to hear from you. Maybe you can write it down here and then you can share it with each other, because I think that's the best way of trying to tackle this. I wouldn't say phenomenon, but I think it's a issue faced by everyone. I have some opinions, but let's look at this. So I got it from Reddit. I like to visit that site. There's a story here, not my revenge. It's about my professor against cheaters. So you can read the stories there. Basically, students are using Chag. I know you know about this. Chag. So what the professor has done is actually he upload the question on Chag and ask his TAs, teaching assistants, to upload the wrong answers. So in that way, he caught the cheaters, the Chag users. Okay. So it's one good way. So I think you've heard of check before. So what I would suggest, maybe we ourselves register to check, provide wrong answers there. I don't think it's unethical to provide wrong answers there, because I think the point of that answer is also unethical. Fighting fire with fire here. So can I hear from you? Let's hear from the audience here about your stories. I've given you one stories already. The check. So any stories or any problems or any solutions that you find useful, maybe you can share with us. We have how many participants here? So one story that I heard about is check. Course Hero. Course Hero. Course Hero. So how do you tackle this check and Course Hero problem? I found my questions on check before, and I showed it to my students, and they laugh at them. You know, you can just ask me, what do you have to ask check? None of the check can provide the correct answer. Any stories about how you tackle, or what are creative ways of students trying to cheat? What are creative ways of you trying to catch your students or get better questions? Just to let you know, the way I design question, I caught 2 students collaborating last year. So they obviously they don't obey the academic on the code. So yeah, so at least the way I design a question, I caught 2 students actually plagiarizing. But like I said, you know, they don't care technology.
Well, for me,
Yeah.
Yusri here. For me, actually, I'm not aware of Check and Course Hero because I don't actively try to find ways that the students cheat.
Yeah.
But I would, like what you mentioned in the beginning, I find that the students would be very hard pressed to find answers to the questions if you design your own questions and it's unique questions to your course. Of course, you can modify them, the existing questions, so that it becomes unique and they're not able to find the answer. That's one way to reduce, and then in my opinion, at least, it reduces the instance of them cheating. Another way is actually to create a question bank. This is what I do, of the same CLO level. So, for example, if I create a 20 question test, and then there's going to be, let's say, 5 questions per topic, then I would create maybe 10 questions per topic, and then randomly choose from those 10 questions for that 5 questions, and then the sequence and the answers will be shuffled, and some of the questions would have randomized numbers, randomized answers, and randomized question numbers in the question. So the chance of them getting the same question, of getting the same answer, would be very small. And
yeah, you give more variables, like
yes. So it becomes and then I always think about the students. They if they want to cheat, they would be, but this is just my opinion, if they want to cheat, they would be conspiring with other people who are in their group. They will not, like, most of the time, they will not have a mass conspiracy group that talks about this, because maybe they feel shy about sharing that they're cheating among their friends. So with that, actually, it reduces the chances of the question. So I don't really have proof for that, but I look at the results. And they seem to be quite. I mean, it approaches the Gaussian distribution in terms of how many students got A, how many students that got B, and even some students who got low. So that's sort of like a side evidence of it being more genuine. But that's what I do. That's just my story. How I reduce the cheat.
Actually, I really envy those lecturers who have test banks. I don't have test banks. Like, each topic you have questions, and then you design the question in such a way that it assess the same learning outcomes fairly to students. And you can just pick and choose and give it to your students. They will get different answers, but we are all assessing the same outcomes. That's actually one. It was very good.
It takes
I
time.
wish I
It
had
takes time to
right.
develop
It
it.
takes time. Yeah.
Yes. And many years actually. But then the strategy that I employ is I do it step by step. Because I teach a course that spans multiple academic sessions, so I have time to always every semester I will add more to my question bank. I will add more or make it more refined, and then look at in eLearn there's one called discriminative index and also a facility index. I will look at those indices to check whether the questions are too hard or too simple
This is
for the
nice.
students. Yeah,
What's
but
the
it takes
index?
time.
What's the other discriminative index?
And facility index. Facility means how easy the question is. So if the question ranks more than 80%, then it would be quite easy. But this one can be those type of questions where you need to have a percentage off so that the students don't fail most of the time. While the discriminative index tells you how much it can discriminate between the students, between the A and the B. So, but the thing with this one, there will always be a test period where we try the questions for that one session and then we improve on it to the right. So it's not really good for the current students, but it's good for future students. So there's not actually a time for us to do research per semester, but if it's a long-term course, then okay. But if it's a short, you're just going to teach it once, and you might not have the luxury of time to do this. But yeah, those things are available.
Yeah, I agree. Test makers, even professional test makers, like those test makers from use for TOEFL, SAT, it's really hard to create questions actually, especially for MCQ. They can create maybe 6-8 questions per day. Those are professional test makers. I mean, their job is basically to just do that, and then they're test making company. So yeah, this is really good stories. Any other stories? I would say maybe any other stories we have heard, we haven't heard, or your experience. Mathway, Slader, and Photomath. I know Slader. Mathway and is Photomath where you capture the picture and then it solves for you. It's like using.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Oh yeah, Photomath. Actually, I taught calculus last semester. Before the exam, I asked the student what kind of calculator do you use. Do you just use scientific? I asked how many students just use scientific calculator. How many use web tools and stuff. And then one of the students said Photomath. And I said, okay, you use Photomath for my exam. It's okay. You want to use Wolfram, you want to use MATLAB, it's okay. But I designed such questions such that they can use these tools, but they still need to put some analysis on top of it. So if the question is just calculation questions, like integrate this term, for example, then students will be really easy for students. Just plug it in, move from alpha or Photomath, they'll just get answer. Usually, what I do is that if you use interpretive question, you draw a graph, ask them to interpret the graph. It will be actually harder for them to use Photomath. So my point is create a question with the idea that students will use Photomath, Wolfram, or graphic calculator in mind. Hopefully, you can prepare you. Warn students that you have spies among their WhatsApp group. Oh yes, bold. You spies. Spies or moles. This is good. I have one spy in my class, which I don't tell anyone, and then just keep it confidential, just in case. Oh, that's a long one. Dr. To. For in-person exam, we have exam invigilators who usually are the people who set the questions. Online exam doesn't have such lecturers on hand to clarify any questions. That's fine. How can we lecturers deal with this problem, as online exam makes it literally impossible to step in statistics? This is a very good question, Dr. Usually when okay, I'm just telling my experience lah. Maybe others want to share their experience. How do you actually answer students' question mid exam? I seen some lecturers they do Zoom meeting while doing the exam. My case, student will communicate with me through I use Discord, but you can use your Moodle for students to communicate with you during the exam WhatsApp as well. So those are some communication platform that you can use to actually for students to ask you questions like that. Any other lecturers want to share their experience last 2 semesters, what do they use to answer students' question mid-exam? For my final exam check, then I did a live test using Google Meet, and they need to turn on the camera as instructor. They need to answer unique questions only. Oh yeah. I have a story about this. I remember this is a long time ago. I don't know if you remember the story about this. So these 2 students, they missed the exam. And they came to the professor the next day and say, "I'm sorry, professor." So they tried to lie to the professor basically. "Oh, sorry, professor, we couldn't come to the exam because tire punctured. We punctured our tires. So please let us take the exam." So okay lah. So the professor asked them to take the exam. They sit in separate room. So they give the exam. First question, normal question, just like question exam. And the second question, there's a which tire. So if they caught lying, then I don't think the probability of those 2 are actually the same tire will be low. So they will fail the exam. So just a story lah. But there's another suggestion also. They include this interview with students after the exam. For example, the exam is probably just like 1 hour written exam, and then lecturers spends probably half an hour with student to do some interviews, like ask simple questions. But this actually ideas came from Twitter. I got that from there's a math professor in the US. They're trying to discuss how you can do this. But the disadvantage is when you have too many students, then interviews will be too overwhelming. I'm just sharing the question here. So, random question on the whole syllabus, fastest check can do to answer one question is within 30 minutes. Yeah, you're right. You're right. This is brilliant. How do I still capture this? So you do interviews, yeah? You do Zoom exam. I would say, Google Meet exam. Turn on camera. Answer. Okay, all right. I think we've heard the stories. So we may not be able to totally eliminate cheating in online examination, but we can devise some control procedures. Okay, some strategies is I think you already tried all this. Use university login to ensure student identity. Use honor pledge. Although honor pledge, you may not think that it's not very useful, but statistically it reduces. People will tend to not cheat when they know what's going to happen to them. Open book, this is what we're going to do today. Randomized question. Student can only assess one question at a time. This is a strategy also. The student may not like it because it adds more stress to them, but there's one strategy. Give the question one by one, and then doing at a time, half an hour, 1 hour. Exam duration should be just enough. This is mentioned before, 1 hour to avoid test fatigue, and also too much time for them to actually conspire with each other. Exam should be open for a small period, same thing. Specific time dates so that they don't take the exam dates at the same time. So this is pretty much, I think, hopefully everyone has implemented in their exams to reduce the possibility of cheating exam. So basically, there's a recent paper, 2020, on minimize online cheating for online assessment during COVID-19 pandemic. They know about Cool First, Spark Notes, Check, Google, of course, Heroes later. But the best way, as found out from the paper, is you need to actually this is what we do: higher order thinking, multiple choice question, higher order thinking question. This is what we do today. Increasing assessment frequency, not just rely to one exam or one project, but do weekly, for example, or bi-weekly. That will reduce reduce cheating. One way to reduce cheating as well. And then again, academic integrity pledge. Why is this important? Is because to begin, cheating is less likely to occur in the following condition when the class and campus create a climate of academic integrity. I think this is important. This is hard to do. It can be done for over a long time, but actually there is no more academic dishonesty in online rather than in classroom. So I think it's an ongoing problem. There are some solutions out there. I don't have any radical solutions. I just follow what's, I think, the good practices of preventing online cheating, like just now, like create these strategies to tackle online cheating, and also creating better exams. I don't pretend that I know the solutions, but I think we can together, try to think of way to minimize, not to eliminate. We cannot do that. But I think it's a problem even before online exam. Okay. But what I would say, if I leave a message, please do this. Class campus create climate of academic integrity, obey on the code, stuff like that. So that will be all from me. I think I've gone past time, 50 minutes. Sorry about that, but I'll end my my presentation here. I think whatever yang terkurang is from me, whatever lebih pun, for me the perfect is a little bit a lot. So I'll end if you have any question or discussion, but I'll hand this back, WebEx meeting back to our moderator.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmad Salahuddin. Terima kasih. There are plenty of food for thoughts, in fact, about designing open resource examination that you have shared with us today. On behalf of University Science Malaysia, in particular, Center for Development of Academic Excellence, we would like to express our utmost thankful to you, Dr. Salahuddin.
You are welcome.
And to all of you for joining us, for joining this webinar. Well, let's give a big round of applause by clicking the reaction button on your WebEx.
Ya, ada.
Dr. Salahuddin. Ya, wow.
Saya baru tahu memang ada.
Ya, ada.
Okay. Alright, thank you so much.
Yeah. So thank you again for accepting our invitation to join us today, Dr. Salahuddin. Hopefully we can meet again in the next webinar organized by CDAE. And again, thank you to all of you. We look forward to meeting all of you again online or on site in our future webinars and also our training session organized by CDAE.
Can I say a few things before
Yes,
we
yes,
end?
please. Yes,
Firstly,
please.
I would like to thank all the audience for interacting with me during the presentations. I hope whatever good you can share with us also, please do so, because I think we should avoid this what I call silo mentality. UPM, UPMJ, USM, USMJ. I think that's also the point, the aim that CDAE is trying to make and trying to combine all expertise around Malaysia to just try to solve our common problem. So thank you USM for inviting me to share my humble contribution to everyone, to the USM community, and I hope we can do the same also. I hope you'll do the same also. If you can get anything here, please do so. This is for the future of our students and future for higher education as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you to you as well. Okay, amazing. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, especially to USM staff, just a little reminder, please fill out the following feedback form. We have already shared in the chat box the link for you to click on it. It's actually an evaluation form. In order for you to get the CPD points, you have to fill out the form, yeah? And the link will only be active for 30 minutes. And for USM staff, CPD points will only be given to you after you have attended this webinar via WebEx only, and also after you have completed the feedback form. So with that, thank you again. Another round of applause for Dr. Salahuddin, please, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. I will share this in PDF. I'll give it to Panuzana. Maybe I have
Thank
the
you.
WhatsApp.
Thank you.
Maybe.
Okay, we also have recorded this session.
Okay.
If you would like to, if the participant would like to if you would like to watch again, please go to our YouTube channel, CDAE YouTube channel. Okay. So with that, thank you again. Have a nice day to all of you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.